14 teams participated in the first Formula One World Championship in 1950. Giuseppe Farina won the first ever Formula One Grand Prix at Silverstone. Farina won the championship despite taking one less win than his Alfa Romeo teammate Juan Manuel Fangio. Fangio took the championship in 1951, but the dominance of Alfa Romeo was fading. They were now closely contested by Ferrari. José Froilán González took Ferrari's first ever World Championship win at Silverstone, while Alberto Ascari made it 3 wins for Ferrari and spelled the end of the Alfa dominance. With Alfa Romeo unable to fund a new car, Ascari won all 6 of the 1952 Grand Prix that he entered to become Ferrari's first world champion. Mike Hawthorn's performances in his Cooper would earn him a Works Ferrari drive in 1953. Hawthorn broke Ascari's winning streak with his win at the French Grand Prix, as Ferrari dominated the 1953 championship. Fangio won the final race at Monza in his fragile Maserati, and then went on to take the 1954 title, driving and winning races for both Maserati and Mercedes-Benz. In 1955, Fangio had a new Mercedes teammate in Stirling Moss. Maurice Trintignant won the Monaco Grand Prix for Ferrari, a race that saw Ascari crash into the harbour. Although apparently unscathed, the double world champion crashed fatally at Monza while testing 4 days later. The Mercedes duo dominated the rest of the 1955 championship, with Fangio taking his second consecutive title. Mercedes withdrew for 1956. Ferrari put together a strong team containing Fangio, Eugenio Castellotti, Luigi Musso and Peter Collins. Collins had a great chance of winning his first title at the final race at Monza, but in a remarkable act of sportsmanship instead chose to hand his car over to Fangio and allow the Argentine to finish second in the race and win his 3rd title in a row. 1957 was disastrous for Ferrari as Fangio moved to Maserati. Fangio and Moss won every Grand Prix of the season, Fangio taking 4 victories to Moss's 3. Now a 5-time world champion, Fangio would not return for another season. Hawthorn won the 1958 drivers' title after a close battle with compatriot Stirling Moss and his Vanwall team, who took the first ever manufacturer's title. 4 drivers lost their lives in 1958, including Peter Collins, who crashed at the Nürburgring just 2 weeks after winning his home race at Silverstone. British dominance of Formula One continued in 1959, with Cooper's revolutionary rear-engined cars driven by Jack Brabham, Stirling Moss and Bruce McLaren winning 5 races. Brabham became the first Australian world champion. Stirling Moss's Lotus gave Colin Chapman his first Grand Prix win at Monaco in 1960, while Jack Brabham and Cooper took their 2nd title. As a new 1.5 litre formula was announced for 1961, Ferrari were the best prepared. The contest for the championship between Ferrari's leading drivers Phil Hill and Wolfgang von Trips ended in tragedy when von Trips collided with Jim Clark at Monza, killing the Ferrari driver and 14 spectators. Hill went on to win the championship, the first American to do so. Stirling Moss crashed heavily before the 1962 championship season began and never raced again in Formula One. Jack Brabham emerged as a constructor, and the BRM team finally came good, with Graham Hill taking the championship after a season-long battle with the revolutionary Lotus 25, driven by Jim Clark. Clark won his first world championship in 1963 with 7 wins from Graham Hill and John Surtees. The 3 British drivers fiercely contested for the 1964 title, with Surtees taking the title by 1 point from Hill. 6 wins in 1965 ensured Clark took his 2nd title, with Hill 2nd and Jackie Stewart 3rd in his debut season. With a new 3-litre formula for 1966, the British team struggled to keep their form. At the Belgian Grand Prix, Stewart crashed at high speed and lay trapped under his car in a pool of leaking fuel. Following this crash, Stewart became a strong advocate for improving driver safety. Jack Brabham took his 3rd and final Drivers' Championship, this time in a car of his own manufacture. Brabham became the first driver to win the World Championship in a car carrying his own name. Bruce McLaren emulated Brabham by building his own car, though with little initial success. As the 1967 season went underway, Lotus unveiled the new Ford-sponsored Cosworth DFV engine. Although Jim Clark won 4 races, New Zealander Denny Hulme took the title in his Brabham by virtue of his greater consistency. For 1968, Lotus lost its exclusive right to use the Ford Cosworth DFV engine. McLaren built a Ford-powered car, and a new force appeared on the scene when Ken Tyrrell entered his own team using a Ford engine driven by Jackie Stewart. The season opener confirmed Lotus's superiority, with Jim Clark and Graham Hill finishing 1-2. It would be Clark's last win. On the 7th of April 1968, Clark, one of the most successful and popular drivers of all time, was killed at Hockenheim in a non-championship Formula 2 event. Stewart won the 1969 title. Austrian Jochen Rindt dominated the 1970 championship until he was killed at a crash in Monza. He took the 1970 title posthumously for Lotus. After the death of Jochen Rindt, Lotus had a desultory 1971 season, with the inexperienced Emerson Fittipaldi driving for them. Tyrrell and Jackie Stewart easily took the title. Lotus took the championship by surprise in 1972, with Fittipaldi becoming the youngest world champion at that point. Jackie Stewart took the 1973 driver's title, but then, at the final race of the season, his teammate Francois Servet crashed and was killed instantly. Stewart and Tyrrell withdrew from the race, handing the manufacturer's title to Lotus. At the end of the season, Stewart made public his decision to retire. Emerson Fittipaldi and Clay Regazzoni went into the last race of the 1974 championship level on points, the Brazilian taking his second and McLaren's first championship. Niki Lauda dominated in 1975 in brilliant style. It was Ferrari's first championship since Surtees had triumphed 11 years earlier. But Graham Hill's death in a plane crash brought a tragic end to the year. 1976 went down as one of the most dramatic. Niki Lauda survived a terrible accident at the Nürburgring. The brave Austrian quickly returned to the cockpit, but James Hunt beat him to the title in the Japanese finale. Consistency secured Niki Lauda a second title in 1977, despite Mario Andretti winning more races. Andretti won the title in 1978 for Lotus, but victory was tainted as Lotus teammate Ronnie Peterson died from injuries received in a first-lap accident at Monza. Ground effect cars took over the Formula One scene in 1979. Jody Scheckter took the title. The Williams team were now emerging as a huge force in the sport, with Alain Jones taking the 1980 title from Nelson Piquet's Brabham. Piquet successfully turned the tables on Alain Jones in 1981, winning his first World Championship title and the first for Brabham. 11 drivers won a race during the 1982 season, including 9 different winners in 9 consecutive races. An intense rivalry between Ferrari drivers Gilles Villeneuve and Didier Pironi rumbled into a deadly feud. Desperate to outgun Pironi, Villeneuve crashed in a practice at Zolder. One of the most entertaining drivers of his era was killed. With ground effect banned and turbos essential, the 1982 champions Keke Rosberg and Williams weren't prepared enough and were beaten to the title by Nelson Piquet and Brabham. As McLaren came to the forefront of the sport, Niki Lauda's experience saw off his younger teammate Alain Prost to the 1984 title by the smallest margin in history. Alain Prost finally became champion in 1985, and in 1986, Nigel Mansell's tyre blowout meant the Frenchman did the double. Mansell was a strong contender a year later until an accident sidelined him in Suzuka. Piquet was the champion for a third time. McLaren ruled the roost in 1988, Ayrton Senna and Alain Prost winning 15 of the 16 races. The new signing Senna took his first world championship. The McLaren steamroller continued into 1989. Alain Prost took the title, but was no longer on speaking terms with Senna. Prost joined Ferrari for 1990, and a first corner collision at Suzuka gave Senna his second title. Ayrton Senna and McLaren made it 2 championship titles in succession in 1991, but Nigel Mansell was back at Williams and was in strong form. Seldom before has any driver dominated the championship like Mansell and Williams did in 1992. Mansell's seat in a Williams car was taken for 1993 by Alain Prost, who was joined at Williams by Graham Hill's son Damon. Prost took the title from Senna and then retired. Senna joined Williams for 1994, but the much-admired Brazilian was tragically killed during the third race of the season at Imola. The title went down to the wire in Adelaide, and Michael Schumacher clinched his first world title from Damon Hill. Schumacher brushed off Hill's challenge in 1995 and then joined Ferrari at the end of the season. In his mighty Williams, Hill emulated his father's achievements by taking the 1996 title from new teammate Jacques Villeneuve. Villeneuve took the 1997 title after holding back Schumacher and Ferrari's challenge. Schumacher was denied again in 1998 after an epic encounter with Mika Häkkinen and McLaren. Häkkinen again denied Ferrari and took the title in 1999. The new millennium ushered a new era of Ferrari dominance. Schumacher became the first champion since Jody Scheckter in 1979. Ferrari dominance left all the rivals in their wake, as Schumacher went on to take the title again in 2001. And in 2002, Schumacher wrapped up the championship by mid-season. 8 different drivers won races in 2003, but none could stop Schumacher and Ferrari continuing their winning streak. Ferrari dominated in spectacular fashion again in 2004, with Schumacher taking his 7th championship. Fernando Alonso and the Renault team broke Ferrari's dominance, winning in 2005. Alonso just held off the Ferrari to win again in 2006. Schumacher won his last ever race in China, and with 91 wins was the most successful driver of all time. Alonso joined McLaren to partner Lewis Hamilton for 2007, but both had their title hopes snatched by Ferrari and Kimi Raikkonen at the last race of the season. The 2008 season provided the most dramatic finish to a season. A chaotic finale saw Lewis Hamilton win the title by a single point from Felipe Massa. Nelson Piquet Jr. and the Crashgate scandal overshadowed everything else. Jenson Button and Ross Brawn came from the brink of existence to storm the title in 2009. Brawn were taken over by Mercedes and tempted Schumacher out of retirement. Rubens Barrichello became the first ever driver to contest in over 300 races. But in 2010, Sebastian Vettel and the Red Bull team came to the fore. They cruised to a second title in 2011. 7 drivers won the first 7 races in 2012, but Vettel still reigned supreme, and again successfully defended his title in 2013. Max Verstappen was signed by the Toro Rosso team, making him the youngest ever signing for a Grand Prix drive. Much like Mercedes teammates Moss and Fangio 60 years before them, Lewis Hamilton and Nico Rosberg fiercely contested for the title in 2014. No matter what the technicalities, speed, competition and determination are the essence of Formula One.